pretty sweet backdrop you got there, background.
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, it helps actually sometimes because like I'm just out of my room here in Guelph and
Oh, are
the
you?
yeah, I'm actually in Guelph right now. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm yeah, and the light kind of shines into the room weird and it creates a lot of weird distortion and stuff in the video. So I found it adding something to the background works better down here at least.
Well,
And
that's like me in the light distortion off my top of my bald skull.
yeah.
Hey, crew, welcome back to the Skippy Report. On today's episode, we have Gavin Brady. So, who are you, man?
I'm as Keith said there, I'm Gavin Brady, so I guess who am I? Eh? That's a deep question, Keith.
Yeah, well, that's kind of hard for a 20-year-old to answer.
Yeah, 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 I'll be 20 right now. I'll be 21 this year. Yeah, born in 2000. But yeah, I guess I'm
What do you do?
currently
Where you live? How you know me?
yeah, yeah. So I'm from Port Hope or Coburg, I guess you could say. I live just north of it. I guess we met back in probably what was it like 6 7 years ago there, probably Keith. Now telemark skiing at Bermacombe there. My mom introduced me to you. You kind of helped me get into the sport. It was a cool time for sure. It's you especially look to it like how like I think my skiing and even your skiing as well, how we've developed and stuff over the last 10 years. There's definitely things change, right? You're
Yeah,
on NTN now. Things are pretty cool.
I know. When we can get together to ski, I'll get you because I have a spare pair of NTN boots, and Gavin's got feet like I have, and he can get on some of my gear and try NTN. Because when you're a big guy, that's the toughest thing to do is get into new equipment because demo fleets don't have Sasquatch gear. Not that
No, they
Gavin's
don't.
a Sasquatch. If you ever see pictures of he and I, he's the little
Yeah,
telly bro that I haul around all over the place.
I
He's
I still look like a little kid next to you at 6'2".
I know my buddy who's the head coach of the U.S. telemark team, Keith Rodney. He just made the PSIA demo team that goes to Interski. I think he's on there for the next 3 years, and I think he's about 5'6" on a good day. And he posted a
Yeah,
photo of the other guy who got awarded being on the team. And I was like, dude, how come you always find the holes to stand in when you're next to big guys? So yeah, we're going to talk about telemark, but the other thing that I think is really cool, and I've always had a fond heart for kids in farm country, is Gavin goes to University of Guelph, which is a big ag university up here in Canada. And what program are you in, Gavin? Because
yeah,
I think it's kind of cool what he's doing.
yeah. So I'm at the University of Guelph right now. So I'm under the Ontario Agricultural College here in a 4 year program, and so I'm doing a major in crops, horticulture, and turf grass. And yeah, so it's pretty cool. It's definitely one of the leading programs worldwide for agriculture, which is it's nice to be on the forefront of things.
I have to interject here because when you said turf grass, I was like, I could just see you being the Bill Murray character from Caddyshack. Where he's got
Yeah,
special turf grass. You can play 18 holes during the day and then cut a little bit and take it home and smoke it, right?
yeah. I'll be honest. I'm mostly focusing on the crops and horticulture side of things rather than the turf grass. I haven't really taken any courses there, but it's actually kind of neat. Like I know for me, they amalgamated all three of those things into one major, but they've for the incoming class next year, they've decided to split them all out. So it's going to be a bunch of division there, which would be kind of interesting.
So, what would you do, like working in turf grass? Like get a degree and then work at golf courses and city
Yeah,
parks and that sort of stuff?
yeah, exactly. Golf course management, like commercial lawns, like school lawns, stuff like that. Like there's like even like to sports arenas and stuff like that. You get looking like it's endless really. There's huge amount. Like the turf industry is huge.
Right.
Yeah, it's way bigger than most people actually realize.
And so, okay, so you're not in the turf grass part, you're in the other part. And so, give
Yeah.
us a little bit of information about that.
So yeah, I'm focusing mainly on the crops and horticulture, and kind of I guess my passion from there stemmed from my family were cash crop farmers, and I've actually as well for the past 4 years on the side I've been running my own business called Midlock Farm, so it's been a market garden that's been rapidly expanding, which is kind of cool. And yeah, I guess that's kind of really what led me into the crops and horticulture side of things rather than just the crop side of things.
So when
And
you say you're a cash crop farmer, how much acreage does your family farm?
yeah, so we're farming a few thousand acres. We're certainly not the biggest boys on the street, but we're a decent size out there. And
And the
yeah,
crops you guys grow?
yeah, so we're growing corn, soybeans, and wheat,
Right.
and yeah, and we implement cover crops and stuff like that as well on a basis that we're always trying to keep that soil covered and building it and increasing our organic matter.
And that's
Um,
the Gavin can be found on a couple of handles on Instagram, right?
yeah, I can be found with my name. I can also be found under Midlock Farms on Facebook and Zero Till Farmer on Instagram.
So since Kieran moved out into the country, and I've been helping her with her kind of homestead, as I say
Yeah.
in quotation marks with my hands, um, I've learned a lot about no-till or zero-till farming. So
Mhm.
maybe you can tell the listeners what no-till or zero-till farming is.
Yeah, so I think there's kind of three stages of tillage, I guess you could say. There's like you've got conventional tillage, which is what most people would imagine. It's the farmer's going out there with a plow or a disc, and they're really working up that earth. They're creating temporary tilth within the soil to make it really kind of like spongy and soft. And like I'm against it, but I will admit it does create a really nice seed bed that has proven yield leads to slightly higher yields. So when we start moving towards what most people would refer to as minimum tillage, that's kind of when you're getting more into using like machinery that's maybe only doing like the top inch or two, or maybe even like a quarter inch, and it's just you're just breaking the crust on the top of the surface there just to stop creating like you can get like a pan layer on the surface as well.
Right. You mean like
And
that the crustiness
Yeah,
that's hard to break apart to plant in,
exactly.
right?
So yeah, a lot of conventional tillage is aimed at kind of breaking that, as well as it also lets you incorporate if you're broadcasting like dry fertilizer onto your fields. It
Right.
allows you to incorporate that really well. So that way, it's not just sitting on the surface and it's not prone to runoff and stuff, which is one of the big nutrient management stewardship goals that I think all farmers are undertaking is reducing nutrient runoff.
Yeah,
And then,
it was interesting because when I used to teach, and I would teach about water systems, which is a unit in grade 8 science, and we would talk about watersheds, and I let the kids know about runoff and you know, growing up as a kid and working on farms, one of the farms near the cottage, they weren't allowed to spread their manure. It was a dairy farm, and we would build big piles of manure at the back of their property, and it would just naturally degrade into the soil because we were on a slope that ended up in the lake, and you know they didn't want the manure in the lake because it fed some of the invasive species. And then similarly, in recent years, we've noticed some gigantic blooms of the invasive species in our lake because they like phosphates, correct? And
yeah,
and as part of fertilizer, some of the farmers, they've been altering the drainage points at the fields, which drains into the creeks and then drains into our lake. And we're lucky because we have a group of people who are stewards at our lake and
Mhm.
try to help control this stuff and help educate the farmers not to do things like that. But yeah, we've had some pretty big invasive blooms of species that don't belong in our lake. So
Yeah, for sure. Like you get looking down towards like Lake St. Clair there on kind of like the southwestern edge of Ontario, and there's some bad algae blooms down there. But kind of one of the neat studies that I was looking at is like I'm not saying that farmers aren't guilty. They certainly are. I think everybody needs to be working towards nutrient management and like doing like the right time, the right practice, the right rate, those kind of things.
right.
Um, but like one of the big things everybody doesn't look at for some reason is one of the worst culprits for it is lawns within towns.
Right.
People will toss nitrogen fertilizer on there any time of the year, and then what people forget is there's city drainage there. So then the first time it rains, it all goes down the culvert if it didn't get worked in appropriately,
Yeah,
and
and
then it's in the lake.
you know what? I was just watching an American news thing, and this past week we had Earth Day, and they were focusing on Earth Day stuff, and in and around New York City, and all of the fecal matter and E. coli that's in the Hudson River. And so some of the hosts were being educated on what happens to municipal wastewater treatment systems. And there are a lot of people out there who do not know that a storm drain goes directly into the watershed.
Yeah, like I know, like, just north of us there, Keith, you look at Peterborough, for instance. I swear anytime there's a rain event over 6 inches, it's always kind of in the sublime news, I guess you could say, that they're writing letters basically asking for permission to release because they're
Right.
full after a small rain.
Yeah.
And that's the nature of the beast, but it's an issue that we definitely have to fix moving forward.
Yeah, and the other interesting thing is when I used to teach, I would, we're an hour and a bit east of Toronto, which is not good because the prevailing winds come from the west, and whatever gets discharged out into the lake from their wastewater management systems ends up coming down our way and ends up on our beaches. Anyway, so I would tell the kids in the old parts of Toronto, there are a lot of homes that have their eaves trough that are hooked up into the sanitary sewers. So and if people wanted to check this out, you can just go online and see how a municipality of Windsor, Essex has a really great video on YouTube that talks about their wastewater treatment centers. And it would show how the settling tanks, where all the solids that we flush down our toilet settle into the tanks and then water rises above it, and then how the storm drains that would empty into the sanitary sewers overflow and disturb everything, and that fecal matter just overflows and goes untreated into the lakes and the rivers.
Heads right down there into Lake Erie.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think what ties back into that earlier is what you're saying. We were talking earlier about tillage there, and I think one of the biggest things is when we move to a no-till system, is we're really not disturbing that. We can get that living root mass year round, and that's huge, right? Because it creates so much more stability within the soil.
Correct.
And then that stability means that we're not going to be, when we're properly applying these nutrients, it allows you to hold it there. Because one of the biggest issues is people think it's just the fertilizer running it off. But a lot of times the fertilizer binds to the soil particles.
Right.
And then it's actually the soil particles that are eroding. And then they become suspended in the lakes is the issue. It's those fine soil particles that are bound to the fertilizer that's in the lake is the issue. It's not actually just the fertilizer. So one of the biggest ways of reducing that is through reducing our soil erosion through water and wind.
Yeah, well, and you know what? When you say wind, as you're explaining this, I remember being a kid on my uncle's farm back in the 1970s. We would plow and disc our fields and that sort of stuff, and through the winter, we would have brown snow because the winds would come along. If we didn't have a complete coverage of snow in the fields, you would see snow drifts that were full of wind-eroded soil, and that would get carried along and contaminate and could even strangle watersheds because there's not enough oxygen in the water. There's too much till or silt in the water because of all of this excessive runoff.
Yeah, because for sure what happens, right, is the nitrogen hits it, and then that when it gets into the water, the algae populations just explode because it's fertilizer, but the algae needs oxygen is the issue. So then it eats up all the oxygen, and then the algae dies. But then what happens is because you got these massive mats of dead algae, they stop blocking the sunlight, and it shuts that process down.
And if people pay attention in news in the last few years, we would hear about green algae blooms in Lake Erie because it's such a shallow lake, and there's so much intensive agriculture, population, all that sort of stuff in southwestern Ontario and Ohio. And it all drains into the lake.
There's just too many people in a small area.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. So what else are you doing in your program or your education at Guelph?
So that's actually Guelph's super cool. Like we've got an amazing community here. It's different than a lot of other programs. In the sense that I think probably the biggest part of being part of the Ontario Agricultural College here is there's an amazing community between all 4 years, which is kind of cool. So
right.
Like the fourth years are welcome, and the first years like we've got welcome back barbecues and all those kind of things, and it creates a community. But not only that, it creates amazing like relationships moving forward. Like, you know, people all over Ontario, you know, people for business, you know, all sorts of things like that. So,
Right.
you know, fostering these relationships is definitely a big part of it here, which is something I didn't realize ahead of time, but
Right.
it's definitely manifested into an important part for me.
Right.
And then one of the other really cool things here is just like, again, it comes back to there's world-class professors here that are doing lead, like, groundbreaking research and stuff like that, which is, it's really cool to be right on the forefront of that.
Now, I know in some of our travels to ski events and that sort of stuff,
Yeah.
we talked about your education. Now, you're also working on some stuff, I think, with, like, I'm going to hypothesize hybridization of seeds or.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm actually next fall, I'll be starting my research project. So that's going to be like 365 days is what that's going to take. And I'm going to be looking at the aspiration of nitrogen out of the soil, and then the reuptake of it through the plant leaves, which is going to be pretty cool. So that's kind of the direction I'm heading right now with my education, is looking at the research stream for sure, and trying to help make these plants more efficient in our systems and help control all sorts of things.
That's kind of cool, because now we're nerding out on agriculture stuff, and then when I listen to Josh Madsen's Free Heel Life podcast, they nerd out on skiing.
Yeah, I can go both ways for sure, but agriculture is certainly is my primal's passion.
So what's the advantage of no-till on a field, like in a practical amount, other than not disturbing the soil, preventing wind erosion, soil erosion, that sort of stuff? Is there an economic benefit to it?
Yeah, there is, if you do it right. It's kind of a backwards statement, but yeah, like, I think the Ontario Ministry of, like, OMAFRA, like with Ontario Ag there, I think they've stated that to do a pass of tillage costs $18. So that's not cheap.
Is that per acre?
That's per acre.
Okay.
Yeah. And that's per pass. And there's guys doing 5 passes of tillage.
Wow.
You know, they'll disc and they'll plow and they'll rip, and yeah. Whereas you go in there with no-till, so you've immediately lost all of those passes, which is savings in your pocket to a certain extent. You're not spending the money on your upkeep of the equipment. You don't have to own the equipment. You don't have to maintain it.
Right.
And then you transition over to no-till equipment, and no-till equipment is slightly special because it is designed for working in ground that hasn't been disturbed and the structure hasn't been changed, right? So you're generally working in harder ground.
Right.
So it is slightly different equipment. But that's just part of your transition to it. Once you have the equipment, you have it for doing it.
Right.
And then there is generally a slight yield drag with no-till.
Oh, is there? Okay, that was my next question.
Like, if you look at corn, I think corn has about a 1.2 to a 1.5 bushel per acre yield drag.
Right.
In Ontario.
When you talk about yield drag, you mean like a lower yield?
Yeah. So, like, if you had been doing conventional tillage, you wouldn't have had that yield loss.
Right.
But people always forget, oh, the yield drag. But the thing is we just saved $50 on not doing tillage per acre.
Right.
So we're losing $8 due to yield drag, but we saved 50. You know,
right.
So you could say like $42, right?
Yeah.
Is the difference. So that, to me, that economically works.
Right.
Yeah, which is kind of neat.
And we're seeing a lot of farmers moving to that these days.
Yeah, it's super out west. It's everybody's no-till.
Oh, really?
Yeah, everybody's no-till
so
west.
When out in the prairies?
Yeah, like our prairie provinces, super low precipitation levels, and the ground's generally a bit sandier, so it's really important to hold it there.
Right.
Like, their biggest battle out west is holding moisture year-round.
And if you're plowing it or disking it, you're exposing much more soil and particles, and then that moisture gets released into the atmosphere.
Exactly. You're opening that soil up and it just evaporates.
Right.
Whereas here in Ontario, we actually, one of our biggest issues is we generally have too much water.
Right. Believe it or not, on those really hot days where it's, 30 degrees Celsius and 98% humidity.
Well, that's the thing is, in our spring and fall, we've got too much water. And then in the middle of our summer, we don't have enough.
Right.
So we go from an excess to a deficit pretty quick here. And that's just part of Ontario. It's in extremes, right? We live in a northern climate.
Yeah.
And compared to our friends down south anyways, we certainly do.
Right.
But that's one of the things with no-till no-till was a lot more popular in Ontario probably from the 80s until about 2010.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So a lot of people started moving over to minimum tillage kind of in the late 80s in Ontario, and it was all the rage.
Right.
That's when we transitioned fully to minimum till was 83.
Okay.
But the thing is with Ontario, again, what I was saying is because in our spring we've got that excess water,
Right.
you generally have a slightly delayed start date because our fields are a bit wetter.
Correct.
And we have been mitigating that through the use of cover crops and having like a living mat, so that way the soil structure's there and it can kind of hold the weight of the equipment better, so we're not leaving tracks.
Right.
Which is really important because that's the one number one yield robber that we can really control.
Right.
Aside from fertility is compaction.
Right. And that's where you're starting to see the using of tractors.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know we were out near Stockdale and we were coming home, and there's a machine out there with all the equipment and taking up the entire road plus a shoulder. As we're passing by on the shoulder, Sean looks and she couldn't believe the tracks. And I explained to her how that is. It disperses the pressure on the earth.
So tracks they're really neat actually. So like you got your standard implement tires that you probably run at around 40 to 80 psi, and those are bad, right? Because that's pounds per square inch straight down on the ground.
Yeah.
In those areas, you're going to see reduced yield. But there's a neat misnomer about tracks actually is a set of like wide tires that you can run down at 4 psi are actually better than tracks. But the big advantage to tracks is if you're getting into wet conditions, they generally claw at the ground a bit more, so you're less likely to get stuck, which is why a lot of guys will go to them.
Right.
Because you still got the low compaction and they're stickier on the ground because they pull harder, right? Whereas a big wide tire,
yes,
you might have 8 inches of flat tire on the ground, but people like tracks. They're kind of a novelty item, to be honest. You can get about the same results with a set of low pressure tires,
right?
But they're pretty neat,
right? So after you finish your education, where do you see yourself?
That's what everybody asks me, Keith.
Of course. Working on your dad's farm?
Maybe eventually, yeah, or in conjunction, anyways.
Right.
Probably not just for him.
Yeah.
I don't.
Advising him.
Yeah, he says I'm going to waste all his money.
Just don't waste what you're doing now, right?
Yeah, exactly. I think I could definitely see myself probably doing some research for a little bit, or at least doing research in conjunction with it. There's some really good extensions that I could do that with, and working closely with farmers. Like I love research. I'm passionate about it. That's actually one of the neat things with farmers is people think, oh, farmers are stuck in their ways, but they're actually some of the most forward people generally. The ones that are successful are the most forward people in terms of adopting new technologies. I know, getting a little off topic there. But
my uncle, I'm going to say he's 70, 72 now, but you know what? He was always an experimenter.
Yeah.
And then as he got towards the end of his dairy career and that sort of stuff, and, he moved into poultry and heritage birds and that sort of stuff. He was growing turkeys in the barn. He didn't have any cattle at the time. And he was showing me the difference between his feed that he grew out in the field and harvested and mixed versus another large company's feed. And so he would put down his feed and the birds would come to it, and then he would put down the company's feed and they would all leave his feed to go to the company's feed. And he says if you look at the ingredients in their feed, they're the exact same as his feed. He says there's got to be something else in there that attracts the birds to that company's feed.
Yeah, like that could just be something as similar to as like a slight processing or grain kernel size and stuff like that. There's weird idiosyncrasies, but for sure, yeah.
Right. Cool.
Mm-hmm. But kind of going back to probably where I'm heading is it's kind of up in the air, to be honest, but I definitely think right now I'm looking at working in research, but I'm also, as I was saying before, I'm also looking at definitely growing midlock farms more.
Oh, yeah.
And kind of building that up. I think that could definitely be something, whether it's going to continue to just be a vegetable farm, likely not. I think I could definitely see getting into like input sales and stuff like that.
Right.
The selling seed, fertilizer, those kind of things, Everybody needs them, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and especially right now, right? Because
Yeah,
everybody with pandemic happening, and it's
everybody's
hard.
going to garden now. Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. So good segue into Midlock Farms and your market garden. So give us a little beta on
yeah.
that,
So I started market gardening. What is it? 3, 4, 5 years ago. I started off at the Coburg Farmers Market there,
right?
and it was a great start. Lovely community. Love them to bits down there. It's awesome.
And you even got an award or a grant or something like that, correct?
Yeah. So to start off, it all actually started off with the youth entrepreneurship scholarship or grant they call it. It's offered by the government of Ontario.
I was a
Uh,
benefit of that also, but I sold canoes.
yeah, so it's an awesome program, and it helped me put down a little bit of capital right off the bat, just kind of for some small things that I needed for my garden. I think at that time, I think I was only like a 60 by 60 garden or something, which is big compared to a lot of people's gardens, but
Right.
a lot smaller than I am now. um
How big is your garden now?
oh the I think I might be pushing 4 acres this year.
Wow.
And yeah, I've got an 80 by 80 now at home, and then I've got 3 acres down the road, and then probably the biggest thing that I've done this year is or second biggest anyways. I purchased an 80-foot greenhouse, so
Oh, wow.
that's the new big thing.
Have
Yeah,
you installed it yet?
it's probably about 50% installed. I was installing it there, erecting it anyways, over a couple of days there last week, and then I had to skip back here to Guelph to do my last 3 exams, and then on Monday night there, I'll be going home for the next 4 or 5 months, kind of thing.
That's
And
it. Now, are
get
you
things
using
finished.
it to grow as a like a caterpillar greenhouse to grow things in, or are you using it as a nursery to start?
Yeah, both.
Okay.
I'm probably about the first 20 or 30 feet is going to be street nursery, and then because I'm definitely growing a lot of. I've got a pile of strawberry plants and stuff like that. That'll actually be for retail coming up soon, as well as some. I'm gonna have hanging baskets and stuff too, like ornamental
Oh,
flowers.
cool.
Yeah, so those will be popping up. You'll see those for sure on Midlock Farms there on Facebook. Um, and then the rest of it too is going to be this year. It's going to be in ground with like cucumbers and tomatoes and peppers.
Now,
But
will
then,
you be doing? Because I've been doing a lot of research. Because we're going to take most of
yeah,
Kieran's garden and make it vertical. Are you doing the same sort of thing, or?
yeah, like with the nature of those plants, like a lot of them are vining plants, so I will
Yes.
be able to. I'm going to be growing them up rather
Right.
than out on a trellis system.
Right. Cool.
Yeah, for sure. Vertical is the future, I think.
And if people out there don't know and you're thinking about tomatoes, you need to buy indeterminate tomato seeds to grow because they're the vining tomatoes.
Yeah, whereas a determinate tomato, which is probably 80% of what you see at a grocery store or something sitting out front, they'll only get to about 4 feet tall,
Right.
which is great for some applications.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Yeah, because we started last year. I think one of the first crops that we started were tomatoes, and I was making some tomato sauce. I was like, you know what? I have to take all of this tomato out to decrease the amount of liquid in the sauce. I'm just going to harvest the seeds. And I just took them right out of the tomatoes and put them in a croissant clear container. And that was my little greenhouse. It was perfect. And then we transplanted all of the tomatoes. I don't know how many hundreds of tomatoes we got out of Kieran's garden, but it
that's
was
awesome.
incredible. Yeah, we had so many. We made salsa, we made tomato sauce. We were
Mhm.
eating them, putting them in salads and all that
Definitely.
sort of
Yeah.
stuff. Yeah, it's kind of
It's awesome once you have a surplus of something, just how if you're creative, just how it just pops up into everything. It's pretty cool. Part of my passion, the reason I'm down this road is I just love fresh food, which is kind of what led to market gardening, right? Like it's just the quality of fresh food is just it's unbelievable.
yeah.
It's amazing. I think everybody should experience it.
They should. When the girls were at home, so this would be, I think, 10 years ago now.
Mhm.
Maybe even before that. There was a farm, an organic CSA in Camborne, North Camborne, and we bought a share, so we would get fresh vegetables every week from May until October, and we never knew what we were getting. It was the farmer's pick, right?
Yeah.
And once the girls started eating it, they were like maybe 16, 17 years old, and they're like, wow, does this food ever taste better? So
Yeah.
since then, we had gardens when the girls were little, which were primarily to keep them busy. They'd
Mhm.
go out and get snap peas and cucumbers and that sort of stuff. And as they grew, we kind of set that aside, but we went back to the gardening. And then with the pandemic and Kieran having her land,
Mhm.
that's where she has the land, and Sean and I are the stewards of her garden. And even
Yeah.
Bronwyn, they're in Windsor. It's incredible how much further ahead they are in the growing season
Oh, it's
than we
crazy
are.
down there.
Yeah.
Yeah, like even when I drove down here, because we don't have stable internet at home, so I had to come down here, unfortunately, and isolate with the pandemic and to write my quizzes, my not quizzes, exams.
Right.
But just driving along and looking at the wheat fields and stuff, it's like 5 inches taller than what we've got at home already in
Exactly.
wheat, and it's so green. It's
And
makes me envious.
just for listeners who are not in and around the GTA area, from where we live, because Gavin lives 10 minutes north of me almost directly, and Guelph is almost 2 hours directly west.
Yeah, it's pretty much on the dot, 2 hours, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's a little further south too, so.
Yeah, it's a little bit further south, but we've got the same amount of heat units here, which is kind of interesting.
Okay.
Just because we're a bit further off the water,
right.
So the amount of the growing degree days is basically the same.
And so if people don't know what heat units are, all you have to do is find a place like, say, Port Hope, which is on the shore of Lake Ontario, and feel what it's like in the summertime. And then you drive a half an hour north to Peterborough, and it could be almost 8 or 9, maybe even 10 degrees Celsius warmer, because they're not near that thermal mass that helps regulate our microenvironment.
Yeah, for sure. It's neat. Yeah.
That's kind of cool. So, where do people find your produce from Midlock Farms? Do you actually, I know that last year you tried having an honor system market.
Yeah, and it went awesome actually in the end.
And
Yeah.
where but are you going to go back there this year, or?
Yeah, so I'm gonna be on the I'm gonna be back there again on the side of County Road 9 there, just west of the tennis courts and the chip truck there.
Oh, and that's at County Road 18 that goes up into oh, it's not Harwood, it's
Yeah, what's the name of that road?
I've ridden my bicycle a million times through that little village. Oh,
is it Plain? No.
Well, yeah, you're in Plainville up on the hill.
Yeah.
But most people would be familiar with what the heck's that little town's name just east of Boodley?
Harwood. Yeah.
No, it's not Harwood, is it?
I think so.
Oh, anyways, so just look for Plainville, County Road 9 and County Road 18.
Yeah, you just drive all of County Road 9 and you'll find me.
Yeah. In a cornfield.
No, like I've got an address and stuff on if people are interested in finding it, it's under Midlock Farms on Facebook there. I've got a retail address and stuff.
Oh, that's good.
You can just toss that straight into Google Maps and it'll take you to my vegetable stand, it is an honor system.
Yep.
And I know that was, I think probably what you're hinting at there is last year, the beginning of the season, I was receiving quite a bit of theft from it, unfortunately.
Yeah, you know what? I have
really
some former students who live in Welcome, and their mom runs a market garden, and the same thing, theft, whether it was money or produce and that sort of stuff,
Yeah, it's really unfortunate because the thing is I grow so much food. It's like, like if it was a money issue for someone, it's like, take whatever you need kind of thing. I like, I'm willing to help you. Like it doesn't cost me a whole, like it's my time is mainly what I have invested. And if somebody else is hurting and just needs helped out for a week or a couple of months,
right.
Especially with the pandemic, it's hitting a lot of people hard, right?
Exactly. And they're not as fortunate as us and have the land that we can, turn into a garden or put chickens on.
I'm pretty fortunate working, being a farm employee. It's certainly an essential worker position.
Right.
So it doesn't really, not too much has actually changed in my day-to-day life by the pandemic in terms of work. It's still, you got to go out there, and if you don't plant it, it won't grow. And if it doesn't grow, you can't pay the bills, right?
Yeah, exactly. And what was interesting last year when Kieran's chickens started laying, and she has enough that she can sell eggs to friends and that sort of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
She didn't know how much to charge, and she was she worked out all her expenses and that sort of stuff, and then she says, okay, well, it costs this much, but I have my time, and that means I'd have to sell eggs for $7 or $8 a dozen, and people would probably not want to do that. And
People wouldn't want to buy them is the issue.
yeah, so I said, Kieran, welcome to the realizations about farmers, about
business in general.
you know what, they work so hard. Yes, they have land, they have all this equipment that the bank probably owns and that you're paying off.
Yeah.
And the long hours, and they're working for less than $1 an hour or something like that.
Oh yeah, I'm an employee of my dad's business, and that pays for my schooling and stuff is the main benefit. But I'd be scared to look at what he makes per hour.
Yeah, do it for the
well
love.
Below minimum wage. It's probably around the $10 or under. But the neat thing is sure, you're not bringing home a great wage per year, but you are building equity. You're paying off farms, right?
Right.
So that it's not a liquid asset, but it is an asset.
That's right. And that helped me to explain to her. It's like, okay, so if you've got 1,000 acres and you're making this much money, how much more difficult is it to add another 1,000 acres, or even 1 acre, or expand your little market garden or kitchen garden? There's not that much effort. We would grow up, or when the girls were growing up, we'd be at the cottage, and we have friends there, and they have a few kids and our 2 kids, and we never knew how many kids we were having for lunch. Some days we might have 5, 6, 7. Some days we might have 2 or 3. Some days none. But when you're cooking for a couple of kids, there's no extra effort to cook for a few more kids.
Yeah, like if you can, I think the easiest way of saying that is if you can do something really well on 10 acres, and as long as you've got the management there, in order to as long as the management's present, you can scale anything, right? Like
right.
If you can do it on 10 acres, you can do it on 1,000,
right.
as long as you're able to scale it proportionally and sustainably.
Yeah.
Like certain things don't become sustainable at larger scales, but
well, I have. Do you know Aaron and Tyler at Foragers Farms? Yeah, so they're increasing their small organic farm, and up until now they've had a BCS, which is a walk-behind tractor. It's like a mega heavy-duty tiller that you can put implements on and that sort of stuff. And they've just purchased a tractor. They had antique tractors, but they've just purchased a newer tractor, and they've added more land. So as they grow, that tractor, whether they're working on 2 or 3 acres, can now work 40 or 50 acres.
Well, that's the nice thing about a tractor is they don't mind how many hours a day they work.
Correct.
They don't complain. As long as you do your maintenance for them and keep them full of fuel, they're good to go.
Yeah, I remember we were working on Kieran and Henry's septic system, and we had the miniest of excavators.
Yeah,
we were able to drive it into the garage because the people who built their house put part of the septic system in the garage, and the shovel on the front of it was maybe 14 inches by 14 inches. Like, it was so tiny. And the guy that we borrowed it from, he has a landscaping company, and he said his employees laughed, said, we could shovel more than that thing. He goes, all day without complaining, without taking any breaks. And that's the advantage of the equipment, right?
I don't think I don't know anybody out there that can, I don't think you could put the same amount of people, like, if you look at a 10-minute, what an excavator can do in 10 minutes, you throw the same amount of people at it, do the same amount in 10 minutes.
No.
Those same amount of people won't be able to do the same amount for 14 hours.
No, exactly.
They die.
Yeah. That's kind of cool. Yeah. So the other thing that we can talk about, so we've talked about your education, we've talked about midlock farms and that sort of stuff. What was your attraction to doing your market garden?
I think definitely part of it was like growing up, growing row crops. Definitely has a ingrained agriculture in me from a young age. I think always loved it. There was a period of time there where I kind of rejected it almost and thought I was going to go a completely different direction. I was looking at engineering.
Yeah, like most kids growing up on a farm.
Yeah,
they experience the hard work and they're like, yeah, I don't want to do that the rest of my life.
Yeah, from about grade 8 to grade 10, I was like, nope, not going to farm. And then grade 11, grade 12, all of a sudden I'm applying for a school that specializes in agriculture. So
Right.
a pretty big turn on the head there. But yeah, I think definitely just I love like watching plants grow is just there's something super satisfying about it. Watching your fruits of your labor just mature and
Right.
become something amazing, whether it's with wheat, corn, or vegetables. Like
Yeah.
it's amazing.
Yeah. You stand back and it's like, yeah, I grew this.
Yeah, I did that.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
I facilitated it anyways.
Right. Right. You know what? That was the same thing as when I worked as a carpenter. You know, you'd stand back at the end of the day and it's like, whoa, we were able
I
to do
framed it
that
up.
much. Yeah. You get immediate satisfaction. And then when
Yeah.
moved into teaching, it was like, how long before I get job satisfaction out of this job? And I'm sure that there are a lot of people stuck in that sort of mentality, but it took me a good 5 years before I actually started to get some job satisfaction from teaching.
Yeah, I think part of that too is it's probably right when you first started teaching, you're probably, well, knowing who you are, maybe you weren't, but I know probably a lot of people are probably super nervous and stuff, and it takes them a little bit of time before they fall into their groove and really feel comfortable, right?
Well, you know, yes, but I was really lucky because my first job right out of university was shop teacher. Well, not right out of university. I did work in logging camps in Northern Ontario, but yeah, shop teacher. So I had one lesson prep for the grade sevens, and I had like 5 or 6 classes there, and then I had one lesson prep for the grade eights, which was another 5 or 6 classes. So
Mhm.
I really benefited. Actually, my life benefited from the simplicity of that. I have some colleagues who taught specific topics, subjects, and they hated it. They thought it was boring. And I was like, you know what? The freedom that having one prep or 2 preps for 10 classes allowed me to enrich the other parts of my life, which was generally riding my bicycle.
Yeah, I think that's probably definitely both a big part of both of our lives is when you start looking outside of agriculture and like jobs, I guess. We're both very into to activities, right? Like we both telemark ski and
Yeah,
I love whitewater kayaking and you're super into stand-up paddleboarding and stuff like that.
that's
And
right.
yeah.
I think I would be more into whitewater kayaking if I had learned how to do a roll before I almost
Yeah.
drowned.
Yeah, I think that's like anything, right? A bad experience can kind of put you off something.
Yeah, but
But yeah.
that doesn't, you know, I'll go out kayaking, mostly
Yeah.
flat water. Yeah, but
Yeah, it's
I
fun.
love tripping in a canoe. You can take more gear than in a kayak.
Oh yeah, canoe tripping is amazing. You go into the back country of Algonquin or Wabakimi, and it's breathtaking.
Have you seen? I think it's Kevin Calnan.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I went to a talk that he was giving at the Coburg Library one day, and first words out of his mouth were, "Who here has been tripping where you didn't have to portage?" And I was the only guy who put my hand up, and he goes, "You're a smart man,"
Yeah.
because he's been paddling in the backcountry for years, and there was a time in his career that he was rediscovering the old canoe routes in
Canoes.
northern Ontario, and my gosh, the pictures that we saw were the rivers that he would go up with all the log debris and that sort of stuff, you know, and how he would have to drag his canoe up and over, and sometimes where there was no water that, you know, years ago it was insane.
Yeah, or the river was just too low in spots. Beaver dams changed
Yeah,
levels and all
yeah.
sorts of things.
Yeah, so like Gavin, you know, he's an outdoor enthusiast, but he's like a outdoor ed student. He's into winter camping. He'll go up into Algonquin Park in the coldest nights
Yeah.
and that sort of stuff. And
Yeah, I spent 5 nights in Algonquin this past winter actually when the lockdown kind of eased off during the winter and
right,
it was a lot of fun. I
and
think winter camping is one of those things, you know, you can kind of suffer in the moment or whatever, but you look back on it and think, oh, that was fun.
exactly, yep, yeah, yeah. You know, that was like my first paddling trip on Lake Superior. We put in at Wawa. We took out at Montreal River Harbor, and it's like 70. I don't know if it's 70 miles or 70 kilometers. It's like
70 something.
yeah, that's a long way, man. You know, and
Yeah.
and I'd never done that. I've only been used to paddling in and around my cottage and some rivers and out here in Lake Ontario and that sort of stuff. But I really love paddling on Lake Superior. You can get out there, and other than your paddling partner, you don't see other people for 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah, for sure. Like I love it. Like I think definitely kind of outdoor like education and sports is definitely my secondary passion to agriculture.
Right.
I think you know this, but I'm these this upcoming year and this past year, I've actually been the president of the University of Guelph Outdoors Club, which is
Right.
pretty cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, which is I think definitely our motto is instilling in like outdoor like oh shoot. It's like yeah, we're getting people outside that have never been outside, right? So like we're taking a pile of international students that are on exchange and stuff like that in Algonquin,
Right.
and it's so cool to see the reactions and stuff.
Right. You know what? I was just thinking of an opportunity. We'll talk about it when we're finished this interview. Just remind me of the TSO youth stuff. And so telemark skiing. Why did you get into telemark skiing? Other than you probably saw me and was like, yeah, that's cool, man.
Saying it now, I think my smart aleck reply would be to suffer. But
I don't know.
Honestly,
you know Adam Sauerwein, right?
yeah.
Anyways, he's got a podcast, and he talks about I can't remember his exact quote, but it's like his level of the ability to suffer. He equates to his level of fitness, which there is no correlation.
No.
You know, but he just likes to get out there and suffer.
Yeah, I think your level of fitness can just let you suffer more. It lets you go further.
Right.
But definitely the reason I got into it was oh gosh, probably I must have been probably 10 or something. I can remember just skiing at our home hill, Brimacombe there.
Right.
Which is, also known as the Oshawa Ski Club in Kirby previously to that. I can just remember, I don't know if it was you or who it was, but I can just remember seeing a couple of telemark skiers, and just watching them go down the hill. And it was just like, I want to do that.
Right. Yeah. And, Gavin talks about how we kind of met, but he forgot that we've kind of been intertwined in each other's lives for a lot longer than he thinks.
Yeah.
Because his mom taught both of my girls.
Yeah. For sure, yeah. No, it was definitely. I can remember being super nervous. I was like, "Oh, I'll just reach out to Keith." He telemarks. Like, I can remember being like, "Oh gosh, who is this man?" Like, who are you reaching out to?
Yeah, I remember your mom. I think bought you skis for Christmas.
Yeah.
Used skis.
Set of used skis from the city garage.
Yeah,
and
they had the G3 Targa binding on it. They had what were they? K2.
They were K2. I think they say telemark right on it.
They do, yeah, but I don't know if they were like heli-pieced or
totally pieced, maybe.
Totally pieced, possibly.
Yeah, I normally have them under my bed.
Right.
Like that's where I keep all my skis here in Guelph.
So
I took them home.
So I sent his mom Sherry off to Sojourn and got him a pair of boots, 75 millimeter boots, and he's been skiing that ever since. I remember the first day I was skiing with him. I saw his skis, but I did take out another pair of skis, and Gavin made a lot of great progress, and I was like, okay, you suffered all morning on those skis.
I'd suffered like 3 days before that. I'd been
really?
2 or 3 times on them. Yeah.
All right. So then I said, you know what? Why don't you try these? So he tried them, and at the end of the day, it's like, you know what? You can just have those. They were a set of Black Diamond Havocs with 01 bindings or 02s?
02s.
Oh, are they? Okay.
Yeah, the set of ridiculously stiff cartridges, O2 bindings.
Right. Yeah.
Awesome bindings.
Yeah. Now, did you have the problem with the cartridges unscrewing on you?
I'll be honest. I remember way back. This is probably the totally wrong way to solve it, but as far as I'm concerned, as long as you just don't really move it,
right?
I think you get a bit of water in there, and then it kind of just freezes, so
right.
you don't move. But I do know some people put a piece of duct tape around the two of them to stop them spinning, and I do fiddle with them to readjust them. But I don't know. I haven't really been bothered to put a piece of tape on them. It's not that big of an issue.
Right. It's going to be exciting to get you out on NTN, see what your reaction is like. Because I remember trying NTN when I was in Freehill Life, visiting them for a week, and we crammed my feet into a size 29 boot.
Oh gosh.
And I went. I usually wear a 30 and a half, 75 millimeter boot, and
I try to get a 29.5 boat, the 30 shell. So
yeah. So that's what I have. I have an extra pair of 30s. So you'll like those.
Mm.
Yeah, and then I remember I don't know. Maybe I'm totally oblivious or something like that. I adapted very easily to NTN. I didn't have a problem, but it might also be my size too, right?
Yeah, like I'm sure just the rigidal torsion, like that's associated with that binding, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure Like I can remember skiing with you, and I remember you blowing out of a set of bindings once or twice. I remember thinking, "Oh my God, how did he do that?" But I'm
Well,
like, "Look
you
at the
mean like
size of
just
the guy."
crashing, right? Just
Yeah,
crashing? Yeah.
I can remember. I don't know if we were at Caledon or where we were, but I can remember there was this awesome little hump, and we were both just
Oh,
flying off
yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah.
And I can remember you're probably only a foot in the air, but like for like 20 feet. And I can remember you just hitting the ground, and then all of a sudden seeing one of your skis just leash and everything broke, and
Yeah,
just away it
exactly.
went.
You know what? That was World Telemark Day at Caledon a few years ago. Before NTN, I was on the
You know?
OG Bomber Bishop, and I
Yeah.
had wiped out, and somehow my ski had cut the leash, and halfway or a third of the way down the pitch, my ski just barrels straight down to the bottom of the hill.
Yeah, I can't remember if maybe, or did you might have ripped the whole binding out, maybe even,
Nope.
or
No, I've
no,
never done
just the
any of
leash.
that. Yeah, because you know what? I watch things on forums. I'll probably
Yeah.
get in trouble, but you know what? There's not that many telemark skiers. And when I talk to the guys, like Todd and Tony and Dave and Sasha, we all agree that it's bad technique when people are damaging their equipment. Now, some equipment really isn't.
Maybe it's a bit more delicate.
Yeah, exactly. And we
Yeah.
take a look at some of our friends who are also skiers, telemark skiers, and look at the problems that they've had. And being my size, and like Todd Joel and Dave Kilbourne's a real hard skier, and
Yeah.
Sasha, and even Steve Kahn, he's a big guy, and we don't seem to have the equipment failures that some people have. Now,
Yeah.
over age, things will fail.
Well, even I don't know, even look at me, for instance. I'm not a small guy by any means, and I know you go onto the forums, and if you just I'm sure you could just write the words like BDO2, and people just be like, they'd be hating on them and saying they tear out. But I've had those on those 185 Havocs, and
Yep.
uh, you know me, I'm not afraid of a little speed.
No, or air,
Or air.
Yeah,
Yeah.
or
I know.
hucking cliffs and stuff.
Yeah, just go.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can remember my dad the first time we were skiing at Tremblant. He hadn't really skied with me a whole lot at this point when I've been on telemark. And I remember we were just going down the side of the run, and there was a bunch of medium jumps that were just loping down it. And I can remember him just seeing me head towards me. I remember him thinking I was out of control or something, and I was just boom, just off them and stomping it. But
Right.
he's just like, "Oh my God, I didn't know you could do that on those." And I'm like, "Oh yeah."
Yeah, it's incredible. You know what? Like when I listen to Josh's podcast, and Taylor's on there, and Craig Dosty, and they're talking about telemark skiing, and you know what? I agree with those guys. You get out on the gear that you have, because I've gone back to the volet, or as that's how Americans say it. I always chide those guys in Salt Lake City, and I always say like volet, not volley, volet.
Yeah.
And they're 3-pin binding. I've gone back to skiing that with my leather boots during the pandemic time, because you know what? The only hill that I was up to a certain point was out in Kieran's Field, and it might be 40 feet tall and maybe 2 or 3 degree pitch. And I was able to do a few telemark turns, being able to be on that gear, much easier than my cross-country gear.
Yeah, and like I wish I had a set of leather boots. I've been keeping my eye open for a set of big ones that come up. There's lots of size 10 ones and stuff.
Oh, okay. Well, I didn't know you were looking for leather boots. I'll have to keep an eye also. Yeah.
But I know, like, I picked up a set of I think they're Blizzard skis. They're like 210 or 220 centimeters long, straight skis. And they're with the old voile binding on it. They were actually a releasable binding from way back in the day.
You've got the plate with
with that crazy cartridge thing sticking out the front.
Exactly. Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I remember just getting on there, and I got my 3-buckle like heavy composite boots, and I'm strapping into these things. I'm like, I'm gonna tear these things apart. Like the skis are already delaminating. Like I got them for free, classic telemarker fashion.
Right. Dirt
basically
bag.
to the dumpster, right? But I had a riot on those, just skiing at Glen Eden on those.
It is. Yeah. It's you know what, and you know what? That's exactly why Josh, he makes all the people in his shop ski leather boots and straight skis, so that when they have clients coming in, you're a well-rounded retail person, and you can have that conversation, with somebody. I remember teaching a guy on a Wednesday night. He's more experienced than I am, and that's my polite way of saying he's older. And he had never really been on plastic boots and shaped skis.
Yeah.
So I took him out for a lesson, and he really enjoyed it, but he said he would prefer skiing on his straight skis and leather boots, and asked if I could continue giving him lessons on that. And I was like, well, only under one condition, if I can ski my leather boots and straight skis. And so we had a blast. I don't remember his last name, but his first name, I believe, was Larry. And, I would go from teaching a lesson on modern equipment with, T race boots and what's probably my Vocal Kendo skis. And then I would go into K2 heli-piste with a 3-pin binding and my leather boots.
Yeah.
And you know what? The first run down, I don't know, have you ever skied, where is it that I used to teach in Toronto there in the North End?
Oh, I know what you mean. I haven't.
Yeah.
It's where I think Holly skis there quite a bit.
That's right, yeah, because I was working for, anyways, down that pitch, which might be 200, less than 200.
Yeah, a couple 100 feet max.
Yeah. I fell like 3 times, like it's like, oh, right, you cannot carve these things. You have to kind of smear the turns. And
you got to slide.
Yeah, and so when I was watching the initiation of guys in Josh's retail store this year, all the wipeouts that they have. But you know what? That's the fun of skiing.
Well, and I really do have to believe that. I think it's, maybe I'm like, I don't know, you go into the forums and people are like, oh, NTN's the future. Everybody needs to switch to it. That's the only way we're going to get progression within the sport. But I think, you know what? Like, I think almost like you look at NTN, 75 mil, and then like 3-pin before it, and even 75 mil with straight skis and 3-pin with straight skis. I think they're almost all different sports. Like like I think they all flow and progress into one another and complement each other. But I don't think you can say one's better than the other. Like they're different.
Yeah, exactly. But the only thing is that why they're saying NTN is the future is because nobody's going to go back and
no, nobody's building 75 mil stuff.
Yeah.
No.
So we just all have to dumpster dive and trade things off with people, worn out stuff.
But that's, I don't know. Like I equate that almost to people saying, "Oh, you shouldn't buy hardtail bikes."
Right.
Like you should only buy full suspension, and it's like
I hate full suspension bikes. Now
I've never ridden one.
Oh man, they absorb. Well, I may not ride it in the right spot, but I find it absorbs a lot of my energy.
Yeah.
Like even my mountain bike I used in the wintertime to commute, and the school where I teach, I have a hill both ways across the valley, and every time I'd be riding that front suspension going up the hill, I felt as if it was taking energy away from pedaling up the hill, unless I was doing it wrong.
I don't think you were. Like that's one of the fatal flaws with that system, right? Is anytime you add springs, you're absorbing energy, right?
Yeah, and I remember Steve Kahn telling me the real reason why they developed that front suspension was to stick turns in berms and that sort of stuff.
Yeah,
instead of crashing up and over them.
Yeah, like
I might be wrong.
Yeah, I know my uncle, like avid cyclist as well. But when I know he was down in Moab, I think, and he rented a full suspension bike for a day down there, and it was like like a $7,000 bike kind of thing that you rent for a couple $100.
Right.
And he just had a blast on it. And he's like, at first I was a little bit nervous about it. Like it had dropper seat and stuff on it, with air. Like it had all the gadgets, right?
Yeah.
He's like, I was just looking at these trails. I was like, oh my God, like there's like 10-foot cliff drops and stuff. And he's just like, he's a competent cyclist.
Right.
But hadn't really ridden a full suspension before. And I know he was just saying, he's like, oh my gosh, it was amazing. Like what a full suspension bike allowed me to do.
Right.
Like if I'd been on a hardtail, there's not a chance I would have thought about riding off. He's like, I'm not good enough. He's like, there's some people that could, but but I know he's like, I asked him what it was worth, and he's like, can't justify that for riding in Ontario. He's just like, it's just different kinds of riding, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So, that'd be more of a downhill bike, probably.
Yeah, like a downhill bike, or or just like a bike for if you're doing trails with a lot of elevation change with big drops and big moves, right? Yeah, you see a lot of guys that like them for downhill for sure.
Right. Well, I think we're getting near the end of this.
Yeah.
When's your next exam?
It's my next exam is 6:45 on Monday night, and it's 2 hours. So that's gonna be a grain crops. That's all about, again, going back to those row crops and stuff that my family grows. So it's
Right.
I think it should be a bit of a walk in the park, to be honest.
Oh, I don't say that, man. You know, I'm married to a Murphy. You better reach out and find some real wood to touch, because stuff goes sideways when people say that. You know,
Yeah.
Murphy's Law.
Yeah, no, I know. I don't know. Yeah, I've hammered through all my other exams, and it's kind of nice to be getting to the end, but you still got to stick to it, right?
Right. Well, I want to say thanks for spending an hour with me.
Yeah.
And educating me and some of the listeners. And don't forget, Midlock Farms in the Coburg, Port Hope area up by Rice Lake, County Road 9 and County Road 18. Where? Yeah. Oh, yeah, you said to go on your Facebook page, and there'll be an address and that sort of stuff.
Yeah, Facebook or Instagram, I'm there.
All
Zero
right.
Till Farm on Instagram, Midlock Farms on Facebook. They used to be the same, but
right.
Kind of started building a Zero Till Farmer brand there a couple of years ago for some reason.
That's awesome.
Make things more confusing for everybody.
Right, yeah. All right, well, you take it easy, my friend. Tell your parents that I said hi. And I can't wait till, as we say all the time, that this shit is done.
Yeah.
All right, well, you take it easy.
All right.
Ciao. Hey, crew. Just want to thank you for listening in to the Skipper Report and allowing Gavin and I to nerd out on agriculture, telemark skiing, and a little bit of outdoor adventures. Check back in a couple of weeks for the next episode of the Skippy Report.